Okay, but let us begin. Sorry for the delay. We're going to talk about also please excuse me if I cough a little bit. I've got a little allergies, but I think we'll get through it hopefully. But yeah, we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite brachas in Shemona Esrei, Chonin Adas, or the bracha of Bina. And we'll go through it. Different approaches. So I'm going to give you Schwab's approach, but I also going to give you another approach, which I think is also a nice understanding of the bracha. But before we actually get to the words, so you'll notice that this bracha is actually a little bit different than all other brachas, because this bracha doesn't start with the bakash. It doesn't start with asking for something. Meaning all other brachas start by asking something, like rifainu, like heal us, Kadosh Baruch Hu, or hashivinu v'inser sechar. All the brachas are all requests for something, but this bracha doesn't start with the request. Starts with the praise of God. You bestow knowledge to man. That's not a praise. That's a shevach. That's not a request. That's shevach. So the Bach asks this question. And so I thought, so there's two answers at least I saw that. Number one is that it could be that because we say this bracha on Motei Shabbos, and we say this bracha, we make Havdalah in this bracha, and you're not supposed to ask for anything before you say Havdalah. But so we start off by saying praise of God, and then in this bracha, that's where we make the Havdalah, and then we can ask for something, and then all the rest of the brachas, then we can start off by asking them. So this one has to start off with praise. Could be also because it's really connected to the kedusha, and he's saying that it's really a continuation of the kedusha, which was about praise. And that's why it starts off with praise as well. Those are some answers. But anyways, so now let's go into the words. You bestow knowledge to man as a gift. So what we're doing here is, before we begin requesting anything, we're about to think about, Shemona Esrei, you have to think about what it's doing in this place, what it come after, and what is it coming before. So before we begin requesting anything else, we're first acknowledging that there's this gift that God gave us, which is called das, which is the ability to think, make decisions. It's the ability which we often overlook. We're using it right now as we speak, or as we listen. And right away, that's we're recognizing, we're acknowledging that we have this gift. Rashab explains that chonein comes from the word pain, which is also the word chinam, which means free or a gift. So atah chonein, you're like you give us as a gift. Adam das, you give to man das. And so Schwab says Adam, specifically says Adam here, means it's just for humans and not for animals. Even though we know animals have the ability to think and perceive a little bit. There's you find an octopus doing math, for example. But Schwab says, I don't know if there's any scientific evidence on this, but Schwab says they can't do abstract thinking. They're not able to perceive that. So that's only for Adam. You gave Adam das. So das, like we said, it's the ability to think. And as we get into the other words of intelligence that we have in this bracha, because we use a few words, das, chachma, bina. So he says it's really the combination of chachma, which is the fact that you're learning something exists, versus bina, which is the ability to draw conclusions from that information. And that combination is das. We're expressing to Kadosh Baruch Hu that you are honing, you're giving us this undeserved gift, which is the ability to think. That's the first line. That's just praise, that we haven't asked for anything yet. We're just acknowledging, okay, God, you give us this. Thank you for giving us this. Without this, we have nothing. Okay, and then the next phrase is umelamed la'anu shbina, and you teach insight to a frail mortal. So this is actually very interesting. That I never seen this before. That Schwab says there's a difference between the word, right. The first phrase is ata chonen le adam, to adam das umelamed, and you teach la enosh dina. So enosh versus adam, what's the difference? You think they mean the same thing. Adam means person, man. Enosh also means person, man. So Rav Schwab says Adam is a term of honor, refers to Adam Harishon, but the word Enosh comes from the word Anush, which means thickness. And that Enosh was also the name of Adam Harishon's grandson, and that generation of Enosh was known as Ador Enosh, and they sunk to a much lower level during that generation. It's a side point, but it's very interesting that the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, that the way he starts talking about all the halachas of Avodah Zarah, his first thing that he says, he explains how did Avodah Zarah start. If you're ever curious, what because we don't even have this, we don't have a Yitzhar for Avodah Zarah anymore. But how did Avodah Zarah start? Well, it was this disease basically that took over. But where did it start from? So he explains that it started with this Enosh guy, the door of Enosh, and Enosh himself was part of it. That they made this big mistake because they said God created the world and he created all the stars, all the moons, and they actually ran the world for him. And so they thought that just like we're supposed to show honor to God, so we should show honor to all his servants. So they began to worship the stars, they began to worship the sun, the moon, and that's really where Avodah Zarah started from. And he says that, and that's the explanation of why we call an idol worshiper, what's the term for it? The Gemara uses Oved Kochavim, one who serves stars, because that's really what happened. They started serving the stars. But that's really a side point. The point that for right now, which we need to know, is that Enosh is meant to mean a lower level than Adam. And Rav Schwab says that Enosh in this field means someone not deserving of the name of Adam. And the point is that even though they're not in Adam, they're still given the gift of understanding. They still get Bina. They still get this gift that we get from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He explains Bina. Bina means maybe davar mitul davar, meaning understanding something from something else, not just understanding on the simple level, but to be able to understand something from another thing. And that's the idea that since civilization has began, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has taught each generation something new. Each generation inherits the knowledge of a previous one. They add on to it. And as we can see today, it's increasing very rapidly. We've got things like AI, which I don't even know who understands that stuff, but it's just the knowledge keeps increasing. So when I saw that, I thought of a story that I remember. I think I remember Rabbi Lieber was saying this in Shir, that he said that when they asked her Schechter what should we have kavanah for during COVID, where should we have kavanah? So Rufeinu, they assumed so he said yes, but also you should have kavanah during Chonin Adas, because how do you think they're gonna know how to make a vaccine? They're gonna need the knowledge to know how to do that. But I think that's along that line. But it's important to know that at least in Rav Schwab's understanding of this tefillah, that everything that we've said right now, that God gives us these this gifts of knowledge, has really nothing to do with the human's moral development. How one can be on the lowest level of morality and still be given enormous knowledge of Kadosh Baruch Hu. We know that to be true today in this world. There are people who are very brilliant, but don't seem to be understand Kadosh Baruch Hu. So he says that. So that's why he says, okay, so the whole tefillah changes now, that in order for us to understand Torah, right? This is all for understanding knowledge, intelligence, but the Torah is something else. He says it's not enough to have the regular human intelligence. It requires a special gift from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So we say, Chanenu meitcha, grant us from you, from meitcha, from you, God, Deya, Bina, v'Haskil, these three different things, which we're going to explain. Deya, Bina, Haskel, and we need those to understand the Torah. You can't understand the Torah without that. Torah is the chok, and the only way one can understand is with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help. So Deya, he explains, means Das Hashem, the knowledge about HaKadosh Baruch Hu that comes through the Torah. That's Deya, Das of Hashem, understanding Hashem. Bina is, like we said, Maving Davar, Mitul Davar, understanding of the Torah that results from Das Hashem. Meaning, you understand Hashem, and then because you understand Hashem, then you're able to understand the Torah. So I saw that some sitters actually have the order reversed, and they have Bina and Chanenu Meitcha. We say Deya Bina V'Haskil, so some have Bina Deya V'Haskil. So he says that's just a different. It's not incorrect according to his explanation. Just a different perspective that through studying of the Torah, through understanding the Torah, then you have a better understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that's also a point that we subscribe to. And then finally, Haskel, that means practical applied wisdom. Meaning that sometimes people know information, but they can't really apply it to practical life. So they can't do that. They don't have Haskel. They're not able. They don't have that ability. And then finally, this is a Gemara that we learned this year in the Kollel in YU that about Chanenu Meitcha, the Gemara Nida Ayin Amabei says, how does a person become smart? How does a person get smart? Maya se Adam b'chacham. So answers the Gemara, Yarbe b'yeshiva v'yima b'torah. So you should do a lot of learning, go to business. That's how you get smart. But then the Gemara says, but Harbe Asyu came below Hoyilahem. A lot of people tried this and they didn't become smart. So this is not a foolproof strategy. So the Gemara says, Ella Yivakshu Rachamim Misha Chachma Shalom. No, you have to ask, you have to daven from the person who holds knowledge, and who's that? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that's really what we're saying when we say Chanenu Meitcha, grant us knowledge from you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the only way that we can have true chachma is by the knowledge that's Meitcha from you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's basically how Rishab understands tefillah. Then I saw a different approach. That's from the Meiri, and Rabbi Yaakov Emden also says in a very similar fashion that this is regarding the beginning of the tefillah, das versus bina, right? We say again, just to repeat the line, so we had one explanation from Rishab, but the Meiri says that really das means the natural capabilities that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gifted us. Every person is born with a certain amount of intelligence. So that's what das is. Some people are born and they have a high IQ. But he says there's another form of intellect, and that's bina, and that's what we get from studying and trying very hard. And that's why it says, the Meiri explains that the tefillah says atach honein le'adam da'as umelamed le'enosh bina. You have to right, it needs to be taught to us bina. It's what we get from putting in the effort. And Rabbi Yaakov Emden says that really bina is on a higher level in da'as. Therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu is honein le'adam da'as to everyone, right? At Adam, he explains, right, this is very different from Rishab, but he says Adam, every person gets das, right? That goes to everyone. It's a gift from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But Bina, he explains, only goes to an Enosh. Enosh, like we explained, it means like weakened. So someone who's weakened with the burden from studying, someone who stays up all night, he toils and studies hard, only he gets Bina. That's how Rabbi Yaakov Emden explains. It's through your amelus that you get bina. And then finally the bracha concludes, Baruch atah Hashem chonin adas. Blessed are you, Hashem, the one who endows wisdom. And then this, one last point before we summarize it up, that Rashi and Avodah Zarah says if one forgets his learning, he should be marich and chonin adas, right? And I think that's just not a nice extra ha'ara to put in there, that this is, if you want to remember, we spend a lot of our day studying Torah. We try as much as we can, and we want to remember the Torah. So part of this tefillah is saying, help us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only learn the Torah, understand the Daf of the Gemara, but also remember it. So just to summarize and to say the key points, that the opening of this bracha, right? This is the opening bracha basically for when we start making requests in Shemona Esrei, and we start with Chachma because without having Chachma, without having our brains, what do we have? We need it for everything we want to accomplish in the day, wherever we go, whatever task we're trying to accomplish. We need a Kadosh Baruch Hu's gift of das, and then what's also true is that to acknowledge that Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who grants us wisdom, and we ask him that he help us achieve all those goals of wisdom in everything that we do, any job that we do, in any study of Torah that we want to accomplish. And that's really how we open the beginning of our request for Shemona Esrei. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, shkoyach.